My name is Iris, and I'm 27 years old. I'm a nursing student who was just one semester away from graduating when my world shattered. 2 years ago, my father passed away suddenly, and I moved back in with my mother, Patricia, to save money while finishing school. I thought we were making it work despite our strained relationship. Then came that terrible night when my own mother pointed her finger in my face and screamed those words, "I'll never forget. I will disown you. Get out." Before you continue watching, where are you tuning in from? If you've ever felt betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in a quiet suburb of Detroit, Michigan. It was the only home I'd ever known, filled with memories of my childhood. The backyard oak tree still had the remains of the swing my father Thomas had built when I was 8. The kitchen walls were marked with pencil lines showing my height throughout the years. Every corner held a piece of our family history. My relationship with my father was everything to me. He was a high school science teacher, gentle and encouraging. He never missed a single one of my school events and spent countless hours helping me with homework. When I was 16 and mentioned interest in nursing, he immediately bought me medical textbooks and took me to visit the university nursing program. "You have healing hands, Iris," he would say. "You'll make an amazing nurse someday." My mother, Patricia, was always different. She worked as an office manager at a dental practice and seemed to bring her stress home with her. While never openly cruel, she was critical of almost everything I did. My grades were never quite good enough, my clothes never quite right, my aspirations never quite impressive enough. Dad always acted as a buffer between us, smoothing over conflicts and translating our different communication styles. "Your mother loves you very much," he would tell me after particularly difficult arguments. "She just shows it differently than I do." I believed him because I wanted to, and when he was there, things were manageable. Patricia would still smile sometimes, especially when Thomas would dance with her in the kitchen while making Sunday breakfast. They had met in college, and despite their differences, there was a deep bond between them. Everything changed 2 years ago. I was in my second year of nursing school when I got the call. Dad had collapsed at school from a massive heart attack. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. He was gone at 52, leaving a hole in our lives that nothing could fill. I dropped out of nursing school temporarily to handle the funeral arrangements. Patricia was nearly catatonic with grief those first few weeks. I stepped up, contacting family members, organising the service, managing paperwork. It was as if I aged 10 years in those terrible days. Once the initial shock wore off, practical matters surfaced. The house was mostly paid off, but there were still bills. My student loans were mounting. After much consideration, I made the decision to move back home while finishing my nursing degree. It would save money, and honestly, I worried about leaving my mother alone. "It'll just be for a year or two until I graduate and get established," I explained to Patricia as I moved my things back into my childhood bedroom. She nodded silently, her face unreadable. At first, we established a quiet routine. I attended classes and worked part-time at a local clinic as a medical assistant. Patricia continued her job at the dental office. We rarely ate meals together, but occasionally watched TV in the same room in the evenings. It wasn't warm, but it was functioning. Gradually, though, I noticed changes in Patricia. She joined a new social group through one of her co-workers, women in their 50s and 60s, who seemed to enjoy shopping, gambling at the nearby casino and complaining about their families. When these friends visited our home, they would eye me with thinly veiled disapproval. "Still living at home at your age?" one of them asked pointedly during a book club meeting. I had to walk through to get to my room. "She's finishing school," Patricia said, but there was no real defense in her tone. I also noticed Patricia becoming increasingly interested in home improvement shows and real estate programs. She started making comments about property values in our neighborhood and how much houses were selling for. "The Johnsons across the street got $400,000 for their place, and it's smaller than ours, she mentioned casually one evening. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was focused on my studies and working as many shifts as I could at the clinic. My plan was to graduate, find a full-time nursing position, and get my own place within 6 months. I had no idea that Patricia was forming plans of her own. The first real warning sign came about 6 months after I'd moved back home. I returned from a long day of classes to find several of my childhood mementos in the trash. My high school yearbooks, science fair trophies, even the quilt my grandmother had made me were piled in a garbage bag by the curb. "Mum, what are you doing?" I asked, rescuing the items from the trash. "These are my things." Patricia was repainting the living room in a stark white that made the house feel like a hospital. I'm updating the house, Iris. It was looking dated and cluttered. But these are my personal belongings, I said, clutching my grandmother's quilt to my chest. She sighed impatiently. You're almost 30, Iris. Don't you think it's time to let go of childish things? I'm 27 and these aren't childish. They're memories. I took the items up to my room, noticing for the first time that other things around the house were missing too. Dad's collection of science books was gone from the shelves. His favourite recliner had been replaced with a sleek modern chair that no one ever sat in. When I asked about my father's belongings, Patricia's mouth tightened. I'm moving on, Iris. You should too. It's been over a year. But it felt wrong. Dad had been gone only 18 months, and it was like Patricia was erasing every trace of him from the house. I rescued what I could find of his things and hid them in my closet, afraid they'd disappear if I didn't protect them. The redecorating continued at a frantic pace. New furniture appeared, the family photos were replaced with generic art prints. The backyard swing was taken down because it made the yard look messy. Again, our home was becoming unrecognizable. Then I started noticing strangers visiting the house. When Patricia thought I was at school, men and women in business attire who walked through rooms with notepads. I came home unexpectedly one day to find a woman measuring the living room windows. Oh, you must be the daughter, she said cheerfully. Your mother didn't mention you'd be home. Who are you? I asked. Margaret Simmons, Lakeside Realty, she said, extending a business card. Your mother has a beautiful home here. When I confronted Patricia that evening, she dismissed my concerns. Just getting some opinions on the renovations, she said vaguely. Nothing for you to worry about. But I was worried. My course load that semester was especially heavy, with clinical rotations 3 days a week. I was exhausted all the time trying to maintain my grades while working enough hours to start building my savings. Coming home to find my childhood being systematically dismantled was more stress than I needed. The criticism of my career choice began around this time too. Nursing is such dirty work, Patricia would comment. And the hours are terrible. You'll never have a normal life. It's what I want to do, I replied. Dad always supported my choice. Her face hardened at the mention of my father. Well, Thomas isn't here anymore, is he? He always did fill your head with unrealistic ideas. These jabs became more frequent. Nothing I did seemed right anymore. If I studied at home, I was always hiding in my room. If I studied at the library, I was never around to help out. The atmosphere in the house grew increasingly tense. I started picking up extra shifts at the clinic, partly for the money and partly to avoid being home. This meant less time for studying, which affected my grades. For the first time, I got a B- on an important exam. When the professor asked if everything was okay, I burst into tears right there in her office. I'm sorry, I said, embarrassed. Things are just stressful at home. Iris, you're one of my best students, she said kindly. But you look exhausted. Is there something I can help with? I didn't know how to explain that my home no longer felt like home, that my mother seemed to be turning into someone I didn't recognize. Instead, I promised to focus more on my studies and accepted her offer of some tutoring sessions to get back on track. It was during this time that I found something strange while looking for an old study guide in the home office. In the back of a drawer was a legal document with my father's signature on it. It appeared to be a will, but it was incomplete. The pages I found mentioned both Patricia and me as beneficiaries, but the specific details seemed to be missing. When I asked Patricia about it, she snatched the papers from my hand. Those are private legal matters, she snapped. Stop snooping through things that don't concern you. Dad's will absolutely concerns me, I said. What did it say about the house? The house is mine, she said firmly. Thomas and I bought it together. End of discussion. Something didn't feel right, but I had 3 exams that week and a double shift on the weekend. I didn't have the energy for another fight. I told myself I'd look into it more when the semester ended just 6 weeks away. But by then, it would be too late. The day everything fell apart was a Friday in late October. I had worked a double shift at the clinic after a full day of classes. A patient had vomited on my scrubs, the bus had been late, and it had started raining as I walked the 3 blocks from the bus stop to our house. All I wanted was a hot shower and my bed. Instead, I found a bright red for sale sign stuck in our front lawn. For a moment, I stood in the rain staring at it in disbelief. This had to be a mistake. Patricia wouldn't sell our home without even discussing it with me. Would she? I unlocked the front door with shaking hands and found Patricia in the kitchen with a woman I recognized as the real estate agent from before. What's going on? I demanded, dripping rainwater onto the newly refinished hardwood floors. Why is there a for sale sign on our lawn? Patricia and the agent exchanged a look. Margaret, could you give us a moment? Patricia asked sweetly. Once the agent had stepped into the other room, Patricia's demeanor changed completely. Lower your voice, she hissed. You're embarrassing me. I'm embarrassing you. You're selling our house without even telling me. It's my house, she said coldly. And yes, I'm selling it. I've found a wonderful retirement community in Naples, Florida. I'm moving as soon as the sale goes through. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. You're moving to Florida. What about me? What about my school? I have 1 semester left. She shrugged, a gesture so callous it took my breath away. You're an adult, Iris. Figure it out. The housing market is hot right now, and Margaret thinks we can get $550,000. I repeated. So I'll get part of that to help me relocate and finish school, right? Something flashed in Patricia's eyes. Don't be ridiculous. I need that money for my retirement. You can get a roommate or take out more loans. That's not my concern. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad would never have wanted this. He always said this house was for both of us. He wanted to make sure I could finish school without debt. Your father isn't here, Patricia said, her voice rising. And he left things in a mess. Do you know how many bills there were? How much the funeral cost? This is my chance to finally have some security. What about the will I found? I asked. Dad wanted me to have part of the house. I know he did. There is no completed will, Patricia snapped. Just some draft he never finalized. Legally, everything passed to me. You're lying. I said the words coming out before I could stop them. Dad would never have left things unsettled. He was too careful for that. Patricia's face changed, then her features contorting with a rage I'd never seen before. She stepped toward me, jabbing her finger inches from my face. I will disown you. Get out! She screamed, her voice so loud it hurt my ears. Get out of my house. I stumbled backward, shocked. Mom, please, can we just talk about this rationally? There's nothing to talk about. You ungrateful, selfish girl. She grabbed my nursing textbooks from the counter and threw them at me. I dodged the first one, but the second hit my shoulder painfully. I have put up with you living here, eating my food, using my electricity, she continued, her voice getting louder with each word. Just like your father always taking from me. Well, it's over. I want you out. Tonight. The real estate agent peeked her head in, looking alarmed. Mrs. Walker, perhaps we should reschedule. No, Patricia snapped. This is my house, and I'm selling it. My daughter was just leaving. I looked from Patricia to the agent, and back again, tears filling my eyes. I need time to pack my things. You have 1 hour, Patricia said coldly. Take what you can carry. Anything left behind goes to Goodwill. In a daze, I went upstairs to my room. How could this be happening? The mother I knew could be critical and distant, but this level of cruelty was something new. It was as if a stranger had possessed her body. I grabbed my backpack and stuffed in as many clothes as I could. My laptop, important documents, and a few treasured photos went in next. I found the box where I'd hidden some of Dad's things and added his watch, his favorite tie, and the copy of To Kill a Mockingbird he read every summer. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped his reading glasses and the lens cracked on the hardwood floor. That small sound broke something inside me. I sat on the edge of my bed and sobbed, clutching the broken glasses. Through my tears, I could hear Patricia downstairs continuing her conversation with the real estate agent, as if nothing unusual was happening, as if she hadn't just destroyed our family's last connection. When I came downstairs with my hastily packed bags, Patricia didn't even look at me. The real estate agent at least had the decency to appear uncomfortable. Where will you go? She asked quietly when Patricia stepped away. I don't know, I admitted, my voice hoarse from crying. The rain had intensified outside, matching my mood perfectly, as I stepped out the front door of my childhood home for what might be the last time I heard Patricia call after me. Don't come back, Iris. I mean it. This house will be sold and I'll be gone. You're on your own now. I didn't turn around. I couldn't bear to see the hatred in her eyes again. Instead, I walked away into the rainy night, homeless and heartbroken, while neighbours peeked out from behind curtains at the spectacle of a daughter being thrown out by her own mother. The rain soaked through my jacket within minutes. Each drop felt like another rejection, another reminder that I was utterly alone in the world. I walked without direction, at first simply putting distance between myself and the house that was no longer my home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a wild, hopeful moment, I thought it might be Patricia coming to her senses. Instead, it was a calendar reminder for my pediatric nursing exam on Monday. The mundane notification almost made me laugh hysterically. How could I be worried about exams when I had nowhere to sleep tonight, when I'd walked far enough that I couldn't see the house anymore? I stopped under the shelter of a bus stop and tried to think. Who could I call? Most of my college friends lived in dorms or shared apartments, where an extra person wouldn't be welcome. My relatives were scattered across the country, and I had no money for a hotel. Finally, I called Jasmine, my best friend since high school. Unlike me, she had stayed local for college and now worked as a graphic designer. "Iris, what's wrong? You sound terrible," she said when she heard my voice. "My mom kicked me out." I said, my teeth chattering from the cold and shock. "She's selling the house and moving to Florida. She just threw me out." "What? That's insane. Where are you now?" I looked around at the unfamiliar street. "Bus stop on Maple, I think, I'm not sure." "Stay there. I'm coming to get you." 20 minutes later, Jasmine's blue Honda pulled up. She jumped out and hugged me, not caring that I was soaking wet. "Oh my God, Iris, what happened?" I couldn't explain it coherently then. We drove to her apartment in silence, me staring out the window at the rainy streets, watching families through lit windows, eating dinner together, living normal lives, where mothers didn't disown their daughters without warning. Jasmine's apartment was small but cozy, decorated with her artwork and plants everywhere. Her boyfriend Marcus was there immediately, helping with my wet bags and making hot tea while Jasmine found me dry clothes. Once I was warm and had something hot in my system, the story came pouring out. The renovation, the strange visitors finding the incomplete while coming home to the for sale sign, and finally the terrible confrontation. "She just snapped," I said, still unable to process it. Like she's been building up this resentment for years and finally exploded. She said I was just like Dad, always taking from her. "That's ridiculous," Jasmine said fiercely. "Your father was the kindest man I ever met, and you've been working yourself to death between school and that clinic job." "And she's selling the house just like that?" Marcus asked. He was in his last year of law school and frowned at this part of the story. "Did your dad leave a will?" "I found part of one, but Mom claimed it was never completed. She says everything legally belongs to her now." "That might not be true," Marcus said thoughtfully. "Even without a will in Michigan, the spouse doesn't automatically get everything. And if there was an intent to create a will that included you—" "I can't fight my own mother," I said, fresh tears forming. "I just can't." "Let's worry about legal stuff later," Jasmine said, shooting Marcus a look. "Tonight you're staying here. The couch pulls out. It's not the Ritz, but it's yours as long as you need it." That night was one of the longest of my life. Despite my exhaustion, sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patricia's face contorted with rage, heard her screaming those terrible words, "I will disown you. Get out." I kept replaying our relationship in my mind, searching for signs I'd missed. Had she always resented me this much? Was it my decision to pursue nursing instead of something more prestigious? Was it because I reminded her too much of my father? Or was it simply that I was in the way of her new life plans? Around 3 a.m, I gave in and texted her. "Mom, please can we talk about this? I don't understand what happened." "Kitty." The response came almost immediately, as if she'd been awake too. "There's nothing to discuss. The house is being sold. Make arrangements for your things or they'll be donated." No concern for where I was staying. No questions about whether I was safe. Just cold practicality about my belongings. I turned my face into the pillow and sobbed until there were no tears left. The next morning, Jasmine made breakfast while I sat numbly at her kitchen table. Marcus joined us, his laptop open to a legal website. "So I've been looking into this," he said between bites of toast. "Without a completed will, the estate typically passes to the surviving spouse, but there are nuances. Was your name on the deed to the house at all?" I shook my head. "I don't think so. They bought it long before I was born." "But your dad might have added you later," Jasmine suggested, "especially if he was thinking about your future." "Maybe," I said doubtfully. "But how would we even find that out?" "Property records are public," Marcus explained. "We could check, and you said you found a partial will. Who was the lawyer who drafted it?" I thought back to the document I'd glimpsed. "I think it was Harold Greenwood. He was Dad's friend from college. They played golf together sometimes." "That's somewhere to start," Marcus said. "If the will was in progress, he would know what your dad intended. And in the meantime," Jasmine added, "we should go get more of your things before your mum does something crazy, like throw them in the yard. I shuddered at the thought. She'll just start screaming again if I show up. Then I'll go, Jasmine offered. She always liked me. Remember, I'll say, I'm just picking up some of your textbooks you need for school. While Jasmine went to attempt this diplomatic mission, I searched through the photos on my phone. There were hundreds of pictures of my father and me together, but very few included Patricia. It was as if she had always been slightly separated from our little unit of two. Then I found something interesting, a photo from Christmas 2 years ago, just months before Dad died. He was sitting at his desk in the home office working on some papers. I had snapped the picture to tease him about working during the holidays. Zooming in, I could make out what looked like legal documents. And was that Harold Greenwood's business card visible in the corner of the frame? When Jasmine returned with a suitcase of my clothes and textbooks, I showed her the discovery. Your mum was weird, she reported, setting down the suitcase. All fake nice, but with this scary undertone. She kept saying things like, Iris needs to learn independence and sometimes tough love is necessary. I got out of there as fast as I could. Did she seem like she was actually packing to move? I asked. Not really. The house looks the same except for that stupid for sale sign. I think she expected you to come crawling back. That night, I made a decision. I called the clinic and for the first time ever requested a day off due to a family emergency. Then I emailed my professors explaining I would miss Monday's classes. Whatever was happening with Patricia and the house, I needed to understand it before I could move forward with anything else. Harold Greenwood's law office was in a converted Victorian house downtown. The waiting room had comfortable leather chairs and smelled like lemon polish. I had called ahead, and his secretary showed me in right away. Iris Walker, Harold said warmly, standing to greet me. My goodness, you look just like Thomas. How are you, my dear? I was so sorry to hear about your father. Harold was in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had been at my father's funeral. I remembered now, though. Patricia had rushed us through the receiving line so quickly I hadn't spoken to many of the attendees. I'm not doing very well, actually, I admitted, taking the offered seat across from his desk. There's been a situation with my mother in the house. I explained everything that had happened, trying to stick to the facts. Though my voice wobbled in places, Harold listened intently, his expression growing increasingly troubled. I see, he said when I finished, and Patricia claims there is no completed will. That's what she said. I found some papers that looked like a will, but she said Dad never finalized anything. Harold frowned and turned to his computer. Thomas consulted me about his will about 3 years ago. We drafted the document together. He was very specific about his wishes, particularly regarding you and your education. He typed something and studied the screen. Yes, here it is. Thomas Walker's last will and testament. It was completed and signed in my office on March 15th, 3 years ago. I have the executed copy right here in our records. My heart began to race. So there is a will, a legal one? Absolutely. Thomas left specific instructions that the family home should not be sold until you completed your nursing degree. At that time, if a sale was desired, the proceeds were to be split with 60% going to Patricia and 40% to you. But Mum said, I'm afraid Patricia may not be giving you accurate information, Harold said gently. Thomas was very concerned about ensuring your education would be completed without financial hardship. He mentioned that Patricia sometimes had different priorities. I sat back in my chair trying to process this. So legally, she can't sell the house until I graduate, and she can't keep all the money. That's correct. Furthermore, Harold typed again, searching through more records. Ah yes, Thomas made another arrangement I had forgotten about. 6 months before his death, he added your name to the deed of the house. He what? It's a common estate planning technique. He made you a joint tenant with right of survivorship on the property deed. In simple terms, you're a legal co-owner of the house Iris. Patricia cannot sell it without your consent. The room seemed to spin around me. All this time, Patricia had been acting as if I had no say, no rights, no claim to my childhood home. And it turned out I was actually a co-owner. Why wouldn't she know this? I asked, confused. Harold looked uncomfortable. Thomas mentioned that Patricia was somewhat uninvolved in their financial matters. He handled most of it. It's possible she genuinely doesn't understand the legal situation. Or, he didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The alternative was that my mother knew perfectly well that I co-owned the house and was deliberately trying to cut me out of my inheritance. What should I do? I asked. First, I'm going to call Patricia and clarify the situation, Harold said, reaching for his phone. As your father's executor, it's my duty to ensure his wishes are carried out. He put the call on speakerphone. Patricia answered on the third ring. Patricia Walker, this is Harold Greenwood, Thomas's attorney. I'm calling regarding the house on Elm Street that you're attempting to sell. There was a pause. What about it? Patricia's voice was guarded. I've just had a meeting with Iris, and there seems to be some confusion about ownership of the property. I wanted to remind you that Thomas added Iris as a joint tenant on the deed 3 years ago. Additionally, his will specifically states that the house should not be sold until after Iris completes her nursing program. Another longer pause. That's ridiculous. Thomas would have told me if he did something like that. I have the documentation right in front of me, Harold said calmly. I can email you copies if you'd like, but the fact remains that legally Iris is a co-owner of the property and any sale requires her consent. This is absurd. I'm his wife. Yes, and Iris is his daughter whom he clearly wanted to provide for. The will also stipulates that upon sale of the house, the proceeds are to be divided 60-40 between you and Iris. The line went silent. For a moment I thought Patricia had hung up. Then, I'll have my own lawyer review this. The call ended abruptly. Harold sighed. Well, that could have gone better, but the legal situation is clear, Iris. You have every right to return to that house. It's as much yours as it is hers. She threw me out, I said quietly. She told me never to come back. Legally, she cannot prevent you from entering your own property. If you encounter any resistance, you can call the police to accompany you. I'd be happy to provide documentation confirming your ownership. I felt overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of fortune. Yesterday, I was homeless and powerless. Today, I discovered I was a property owner with legal rights Patricia couldn't override. What would you advise me to do? I asked Harold. I think we should visit the house together tomorrow, he suggested. I'll bring copies of the relevant documents. If Patricia is serious about selling, we need to ensure your father's wishes are respected, which means waiting until you graduate and ensuring you receive your share of the proceeds. That night, I barely slept again, but for entirely different reasons. I vacillated between anger at Patricia's deception and anxiety about confronting her. Part of me wanted to assert my legal rights forcefully, while another part still couldn't believe a mother could treat her child this way. Jasmine and Marcus were supportive but concerned. Be careful, Jasmine warned. If she was angry enough to throw you out, who knows how she'll react when she realizes she can't sell without you. I'll be with Harold, I assured her, and I'm not trying to stop her from moving to Florida. I just want what Dad intended me to have. As I packed my bag the next morning, preparing for whatever might happen at the house, I found myself touching my father's broken reading glasses. I wish you were here, Dad, I whispered. I don't know how to handle this without you. The next morning, Harold picked me up at Jasmine's apartment. He carried a leather portfolio containing copies of the deed, the will, and other legal documents. I felt simultaneously powerful and terrified as we drove toward my childhood home. Remember, Harold advised, stay calm regardless of how Patricia reacts. We have the law on our side, and that's what matters in this situation. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed a moving van parked at the curb. Had Patricia already started packing? The for sale sign still stood prominently in the front yard, a bright red declaration of her intentions. Harold rang the doorbell. After a long pause, Patricia opened the door. She was dressed in her real estate meeting outfit, hair perfectly styled, but her eyes widened in shock when she saw us. What are you doing here? She demanded, glaring at me. May we come in? Harold asked pleasantly. I believe we have some important matters to discuss regarding the property. I have nothing to discuss with either of you. I've contacted my own attorney. That's fine, Harold said, still maintaining his professional demeanour. But as you know, I am the executor of Thomas's estate, and I have a responsibility to ensure his wishes are carried out. Perhaps we could speak inside, rather than on the doorstep. Reluctantly, Patricia stepped back, allowing us to enter. The living room was filled with boxes, some labelled Florida, in Patricia's neat handwriting. The real estate agent, Margaret, was in the dining room with paperwork spread across the table. She looked up in surprise when we entered. Mrs. Walker, I didn't realize you had appointments this morning, she said, gathering her papers. I didn't, Patricia replied tightly. This is my daughter and my late husband's attorney. They were just leaving. Actually, Harold interjected smoothly, I think Ms. Simmons should hear this. It concerns the sale of the property. He turned to the agent. I'm Harold Greenwood, executor of Thomas Walker's estate. I need to inform you that there is a legal complication with the sale of this house. Margaret looked confused. Mrs. Walker assured me she had full authority to sell. That's not accurate, Harold said, opening his portfolio and extracting the property deed. Iris Walker is a joint tenant on the property deed. Additionally, Thomas Walker's will specifically prohibits the sale of the property until after Iris completes her nursing program approximately 6 months from now. The real estate agent's eyes widened. She looked from Harold to Patricia and back again. Mrs. Walker, you told me you were the sole owner. This is ridiculous, Patricia snapped. Thomas and I bought this house together 30 years ago. Yes, Harold agreed. But 3 years ago, Thomas added Iris to the deed. I have the recorded document right here. Any sale of this property requires Iris's consent, which I understand she has not given. The real estate agent looked distinctly uncomfortable. I can't list a property without consent from all owners. That would be illegal. She began gathering her things quickly. Mrs. Walker, I'll need to put this listing on hold until the ownership issue is resolved. There is no issue, Patricia insisted, her voice rising. This is my house. It's our house, Mom, I said quietly. Dad made sure of that. The agent excused herself, saying she would call Patricia later to discuss options. Once she was gone, Patricia rounded on me, her face flushed with anger. You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've done? I think I've just prevented you from selling property that isn't entirely yours and keeping money that should be partially mine, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. I deserve that money I put up with your father for 30 years. I deserve my retirement in Florida. And you can have it, I said, in 6 months when I graduate, just like Dad wanted. We can sell the house then and you'll get your 60%. 6 months. The market could crash by then. The buyers could disappear. Actually, Harold interjected, in this area, waiting until spring might yield a higher price. The real estate market typically improves after winter. Okay. Patricia ignored him, pacing the room like a caged animal. Suddenly she turned to me with tears in her eyes. You don't understand, Iris. I need to move now. I've already put a deposit on a condo in Naples. If I don't close by December, I'll lose it. Something in her desperation struck me as odd. Why the rush, Mom? What's really going on? She turned away, but not before I caught a flash of something in her eyes. Shame, fear. I wasn't sure. Mom, I pressed. What aren't you telling me? Patricia sank onto the couch, suddenly looking defeated. I have debts, she admitted reluctantly. Significant ones. What kind of debts? I asked, sitting across from her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I borrowed money for some investments. They didn't work out. Investments or gambling? I asked quietly, remembering her new friends and their casino trips. Her silence was answer enough. How much do you owe? Harold asked gently. Almost 100,000, she whispered. I gasped. Mom, how did you get so deep? It started small, she said defensively. After your father died, I was so lonely. These women at work included me in their group. We'd go to the casino just for fun at first. But then I started winning, and it felt like for once something was going right. When I started losing, I was sure I could win it back. The pieces started falling into place. The urgent need to sell, the desperation to get all the money, the hostility toward me as an obstacle to her plan. You could have told me, I said. We could have figured something out together. Like what? She asked bitterly. You can barely support yourself. And I was embarrassed, okay. Your father would have been so disappointed in me. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt a flicker of sympathy for Patricia. Grief could make people do strange things, and loneliness was its own kind of prison. We still have options, Harold said pragmatically. The house has significant equity. A home equity loan could cover the debts without selling immediately. Or, I suggested, we wait the 6 months as planned. I'll be working full-time as a nurse then, and I can help with expenses. We sell the house, pay off your debts, and you still have enough for a smaller place in Florida. Patricia's face hardened again. I don't need your charity, Iris, and I certainly don't need you telling me what to do. Your father always babied you, made you think the world revolves around you. Well, it doesn't. The brief moment of connection evaporated. I felt the familiar sting of her rejection, but this time it didn't devastate me. I had spent so many years seeking her approval, and now I realized I might never get it. This isn't charity, Mom. It's what Dad wanted, and legally, it's how things have to be. She glared at me. So you're forcing me to wait. I'm asking you to respect Dad's wishes. I corrected. The house doesn't sell until I graduate. That's non-negotiable, but I'm willing to be flexible about living arrangements until then. What does that mean? She asked suspiciously. It means I won't move back in if you don't want me here. I can stay with Jasmine until graduation, but I won't sign off on selling the house until May. Patricia looked from me to Harold, clearly calculating her options. Finally, she nodded stiffly. Fine, May it is, but I want this in writing. I'll draw up an agreement, Harold assured her. And I'd suggest you seek help for the gambling Patricia. Thomas would have wanted that for you. She didn't respond to that, but as we prepared to leave, the real estate agent called. Patricia put the call on speakerphone, perhaps to show she had nothing to hide anymore. Mrs. Walker, I've checked with my broker, Margaret said. Given the unique situation, she suggests waiting until spring to list the property anyway. The winter market is typically slower, and we're already seeing signs that prices will increase by about 8% by April or May. Patricia's expression changed slightly at this news. 8%? Potentially yes. It could make a significant difference in your final sale price. After the call ended, Patricia looked at me with a complex expression. It seems waiting might be better anyway, she said, as if the delay had been her idea all along. I nodded, not wanting to argue further. I'll come by this weekend to get more of my things if that's okay. She waved a hand dismissively. Fine, just call first. As Harold and I walked back to his car, he patted my shoulder. You handled that very well, Iris. Your father would be proud. I wasn't so sure. The situation was still messy, my relationship with Patricia more strained than ever. But for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. I had stood up for myself and for what my father had wanted. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. I moved in with Jasmine temporarily, focusing intensely on my final semester of nursing school. Without the constant tension at home, my grades improved dramatically. I passed my clinical rotations with flying colours and lined up a job at Detroit General Hospital, starting immediately after graduation. Patricia and I maintained a distant but civil relationship. I would stop by the house occasionally to check on things and collect more of my belongings. She continued attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, a condition Harold had included in our formal agreement about the house sale. As May approached, Patricia hired contractors to make final improvements to the house before listing it. Fresh paint, new carpet, updated fixtures, all increased the potential sale price. She seemed calmer now, less frantic about the future. The realtor thinks we can get $600,000, she told me during one of my visits. It was the first time she had said we instead of I regarding the house. That's great, I replied cautiously. The market really did improve. Yes, she acknowledged. Waiting was the right decision. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Patricia, it was significant. The day of my nursing school graduation arrived with perfect May weather. I hadn't expected Patricia to attend, but to my surprise, she appeared at the ceremony sitting in the back row. She didn't stay for the reception afterward, but she had come. It was something. The following week, we met at the closing for the house sale. The final price was $620,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and Patricia's gambling debts, we split the remaining money, as my father had specified, 60% to Patricia, 40% to me. We sat across from each other at the title company, signing document after document. When it was done, Patricia had a check for just over $300,000. I had $200,000 enough to secure a comfortable apartment and pay off my student loans, with money left over to invest. So, I said awkwardly as we stood in the parking lot afterward, you're still moving to Florida? Patricia nodded. Yes, but not to Naples. I found a smaller condo in Sarasota. It's actually nicer, more my style. That sounds good, I said. When do you leave? Next week. She hesitated, then added, thank you for not fighting me on the sale date, for keeping your word. Dad raised me to keep my promises, I said quietly. Something flickered in her eyes at the mention of my father. Yes, he did. Another pause. You were always more his child than mine. Cousin. The old comment would have hurt, but now I recognized it as her way of explaining our difficult relationship, not necessarily an accusation. I think he tried to connect us, I offered. He just didn't know how. Patricia nodded slightly. Perhaps. She glanced at her watch. I should go. I have a lot of packing to finish. Do you need help? I asked, surprising myself with the offer. No, she said quickly, then softened her tone. But thank you for asking. We parted with an awkward half hug. It wasn't reconciliation exactly, but it was civil. Perhaps that was all we could manage for now. In the months that followed, I settled into my new life. My apartment was small but perfect for me, decorated with some of the mementos I had rescued from the house. My job as a registered nurse was challenging but deeply fulfilling, just as my father had predicted it would be. Patricia moved to Florida as planned. We exchanged occasional texts, usually brief updates about weather or work. She sent a housewarming card when I moved into my apartment. I sent her a Christmas gift. It was minimal contact, but it was contact nonetheless. About 6 months after the move, I received a package from Patricia. Inside was a box of my father's belongings. I hadn't known she had kept his college yearbook, some old photographs, his favorite coffee mug. At the bottom was an envelope addressed to me in his handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. The letter inside was dated just a month before his death. "My dearest Iris," it began. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've asked Patricia to give you this letter along with my personal effects. I want you to know how incredibly proud I am of the woman you've become. Your compassion, intelligence, and determination will take you far in life and in your nursing career. I've tried to ensure you'll be financially secure by adding you to the house deed and specifying provisions in my will. I hope this helps you complete your education without worry. Patricia and you have always had a complicated relationship. She loves you in her way, though she struggles to show it. Please try to be patient with her. Grief changes people sometimes in ways we can't predict. Always remember that your worth isn't determined by anyone else's ability to see it. You are extraordinary, Iris, and the world is better because you're in it. All my love, always, Dad." Tears streamed down my face as I read and reread the letter. Even from beyond, my father had tried to prepare me to protect me, to guide me through the darkness that followed his death. I joined a support group for adults with difficult family relationships. In sharing my story, I found others with similar experiences. Some had reconciled with their parents, others had established firm boundaries, and some had cut ties completely. There was no single right path, I realized, only the one that allowed you to heal and move forward. Over the next year, my relationship with Patricia remained distant, but evolved into something more honest. During a rare phone call, she admitted that she had resented how close my father and I had been. "I always felt like the outsider in my own family," she confessed. "You two had your science and your books and your private jokes. I didn't know how to be part of that." "You could have joined us," I suggested gently. "Dad would have loved that." "I know," she sighed, "but it was easier to pull away than to try and fail. That's my biggest regret." It wasn't a complete transformation. Patricia was still critical, sometimes still struggled to show affection, but there was a new honesty between us that hadn't existed before. As for me, I discovered strengths I never knew I had. Standing up to Patricia had been terrifying, but it taught me I could advocate for myself, that I could weather rejection and still survive. That lesson served me well in my nursing career, where advocating for patients often meant standing firm against opposition. The most important lesson I learned from that terrible night, when my mother pointed at my face and screamed, "I will disown you, get out," was that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to stand your ground even when it feels like the world is crumbling around you. Looking back now, I can see how that painful experience helped shape me into the person I am today. When my mother threw me out that rainy night, I thought my world was ending. I couldn't imagine how I would recover from such a profound betrayal. Yet here I am, stronger and more resilient than I ever thought possible. The healing journey wasn't quick or easy. For months after the house was sold, I would wake up in my new apartment, disoriented momentarily, forgetting everything that had happened. The pain would rush back, along with questions that might never be fully answered. Why couldn't Patricia love me the way my father had? What was missing in me that my own mother could treat me with such cruelty? Therapy helped me understand that the answers to those questions had little to do with me and everything to do with Patricia's own struggles. Her gambling addiction, her resentment of my father's relationship with me, her fear of aging alone in a house full of memories she couldn't escape. None of these were my fault or my responsibility to fix. Your mother's behavior reflects her limitations, not your worth. My therapist reminded me regularly until I began to believe it. Jasmine remained my rock throughout this process. She had opened her home to me when I had nowhere else to go, and that kindness forged a bond between us that was stronger than ever. We now have a standing Sunday brunch date where we laugh about our week and support each other through challenges. "You know," she told me recently, "watching you rebuild your life after what happened has inspired me to be braver in my own decisions." Those words meant more to me than she could know. The idea that my pain could somehow inspire courage in others gave it purpose and meaning. My nursing career flourished in ways that would have made my father burst with pride. The compassion I had always felt for others deepened through my own experience of vulnerability. I understand now what it means to be truly afraid to feel homeless, not just physically, but emotionally. That understanding makes me a better nurse, especially to patients who feel lost and alone in the healthcare system. Last month, I was offered a position as a charge nurse in the pediatric oncology department, a promotion that recognized both my clinical skills and my ability to connect with families going through their darkest times. When I called Patricia to share the news, she was quiet for a moment before saying, "Thomas always knew you were meant for this." He was right. It wasn't effusive praise, but coming from Patricia, it was significant. Our relationship continues to evolve slowly. We will never have the warm, close bond I dreamed of as a child, but we have found a way to acknowledge each other's place in our lives without the old patterns of criticism and withdrawal. Patricia still lives in her Florida condo, now completely debt-free. She sends me occasional photos of beach sunsets and the orchids she's learnt to grow on her small balcony. I visit once a year, staying in a nearby hotel to give us both the space we need. These visits are sometimes tense, sometimes surprisingly pleasant, but always worth the effort. The most unexpected gift from this painful journey has been the family I've created for myself. Beyond Jasmine and my support group, I've formed deep friendships with fellow nurses who understand both the joy and heartbreak of our profession. My apartment has become a gathering place for holidays and casual Sunday dinners, filled with laughter and conversation that heals the old echoes of loneliness. Last week I received a package from Harold Greenwood. Inside was a small wooden box that had belonged to my father, something Patricia had found and forwarded to Harold to give to me. The box contained cufflinks, old coins, and a small journal where my father had jotted thoughts and quotes he found meaningful. One entry dated shortly before his death read, "Watched Iris studying tonight. Her determination reminds me so much of myself at her age. Whatever happens, I know she has the strength to overcome any obstacle life puts in her path." He had seen in me a strength I didn't know I possessed until I was forced to find it. When Patricia pointed at my face and screamed those terrible words when I walked away from my childhood home in tears, I thought I was leaving everything behind. Instead, I was walking toward a new understanding of myself and what I could endure. If you're watching this and facing your own family betrayal, please know that survival is possible. The pain changes you, but it doesn't have to break you. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish or wrong, even when the person you're standing against is someone who should have loved you unconditionally. Your worth isn't determined by their ability to see it. Your future isn't limited by their failure to support it. And your capacity to heal is greater than you can imagine in your darkest moments. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who was treating you unfairly? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and healing. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family we create for ourselves brings the greatest healing to the wounds left by the family we were born into.